All right. All right. Today's Thursday. What a day. Great job, everybody. So far, you guys are crushing it. Okay, so yesterday left you guys off with some work to do with the tariff abominations, which I briefly went over, and the nullification crisis that ensued after. So today is kind of just a recap and review before we get more into Jackson. So there's a couple more things we're going to learn about Jackson. But before we get there, we all just want to make sure you guys are good with what you've learned so far. So today's going to be a recap and review. You're going to review a couple things here. I'll talk about that in a moment. But before I let you guys get into that review, let's talk more about what happened with yesterday, because things got a little crazy. Okay, so this nullification crisis. So I kind of left you guys off with the tariff of abominations. One moment. So this tariff of abominations was basically, again, the government trying to get us to buy American-made goods rather than English-made goods. So they put this tax on imports, so we would have to buy American-made goods. But remember this. So how are the North and the South going to feel about this? So if I give you guys some notes here. The South is going to feel hurt. Less British goods being bought, less cotton being sold to Britain, because obviously Britain's not going to be happy, right? And then they're also going to be forced to buy the expensive northern goods. So because of this tariff, now the South has to buy from the North. They're buying less from Britain. This is going to upset Britain. So Britain's going to say, well, if you're not going to buy our stuff, then we're not going to buy your cotton. So they're going to buy less cotton. This is really going to hurt the South. The South is also feeling that the North is getting rich at the Southern expense. Whether or not you agree with that, that's your opinion. But that's how the South feels. Calhoun, normally a nationalist, spoke up for some of his hurting states. So Calhoun is actually going to be President Jackson's vice president. So that's going to be something interesting to keep in mind as we go on here. All right, so nullification is this idea where states can choose not to follow a federal law if their state legislature voted it was unconstitutional. So what do you think southern states are going to do? Yes, they're going to try to nullify this tariff. So the southern states are feeling that the tariffs are too high and that the money taken from the southern agriculture went to northern industry via loans from the bank. So in 1832, Jackson and Congress reduced the tariff. They said, okay, South, we're sorry. But it wasn't enough, at least not for South Carolina. This state would go on to vote to nullify the tariff law, so they're going to use that nullification. They want to get rid of that law, saying it's unconstitutional. And then they're also going to threaten to secede. Now, these were two vocab words that we talked about. To nullify is to get rid of the law. To secede means to completely break away from the United States. So the South Carolina didn't want to be a part of America. Basically, they just wanted to go off and be their own country. So more about this guy, John C. Calhoun. He was a vice president under Andrew Jackson. He believed the tariff was unconstitutional because it favored the North. He insisted that states had the right to refuse to follow this law if it violated the rights. So therefore, states could declare federal law null and void. This called nullification, a rejection of the law. So they rejected the law, and if the law didn't go away, they were gonna leave the Union, leave the United States. So what does Jackson do? Jackson says, hey, all right, well, I'm gonna send the army in. He gets permission. He's about to send his troops into South Carolina, but before they get there, Congress lowers the tariff, and the state agrees to pay the compromise. So it kind of ends in a weird situation where Jackson's threatening to use his power against the state to force them to pay, but Congress just goes ahead and lowers the tariff. So some key points for yesterday's lesson. The tariff abomination really upset the South. Jackson tries to reduce it. Wasn't enough for South Carolina. South Carolina goes on to nullify and threatens to secede, and Jackson responds with force. Congress lowers it again, and South Carolina gets kind of what they want. So that's the Tariff of Abominations, and the Nullification Crisis. If you guys have questions on that, please do not hesitate to talk to your social studies teacher, and one of us will be willing to help you guys out. Okay, so again, we don't want to go too far ahead if you guys aren't feeling good about what we've learned over the last couple of days. So today you're going to complete this recap and review. Document 1, 1 question here. Document 2, political cartoon, you got 4 questions here, 5 questions, sorry. And then finally, just a review chart, kind of talking about his 3 nicknames that we've talked about. Fill out this chart, and then final question here, that hero or villain question. You guys have tons of evidence to use for this question now. And then we'll get into this last thing. I think so this next event, we'll talk about that tomorrow. So again, if you have any questions, let your social studies teacher know, and keep up the good work.